Hey, folks, welcome to the pre-show. Just getting set up, and long day today, but we're rolling. All right. Hey, Leslie Holker, field guy. I see it. Miley Cyrus. Wrong Cyrus there, field guy. You wish he was Miley Cyrus. John Ward had a big thing for Miley Cyrus. He liked her wrecking ball video. I think it's because she was naked. But anyway, how's everybody tonight? Good to see you. I got that going and that going, and I think we're set. How's the sound over on your end? So it's good to see you, Leslie. All right. I'm tired tonight, but that's usual. All right, we got 2 minutes, 2.5, about a minute and a half. And we go live over on the radio station and with this show. Grumpy Stack. How you doing, Douglas? Good to see you, brother. Need that over there. I think this is the last winter I will own this sweater. I wear this almost every day. I wash it like 3 times a week. And it's a lint collector. It's that fabric. It's like, I don't know if you can see that. It's got this pilly fabric and everything on it. It's clean, but it has just gathered lint after lint after lint. So it's about done. I think I'll need a new one for next winter. It's great because I can step outside with it without wearing a coat. Good evening, Captain and Crew, says Matt Finn. And hello to everybody else, he says. Good to see you, Matt Finn, master and commander of this chat room. We got about 30 seconds, and we're going to go live. Not that we aren't live now, but live in a broadcast way. Matthew Sainsbury, good to see you, and good to have you. So let's do this. Let's go dark, because we're going to go live in a second. Hang on. Sit.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Well, happy Monday night, everyone. Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts, and this here is my show, the Intrepid radio program. And we're broadcasting to you live from my basement in Wisconsin and broadcasting over on subspace.radio. You know, you say basement, you think dank, dirty, web cobby, wet, things like that. That's not this basement. This basement's a finished basement. So it's still a basement, though. And it's semi-finished. Let's put it that way. We've got walls. We've got paint. We got things like that. We got things we got to do to it, but not quite yet. So that's where we're broadcasting to you from, my studio down here. And I'm glad that you're here tonight. And you can see the show. I keep getting messages, and I'm sorry, because once I turn down the volume of my phone, then my volume's down and I forget it. And it's like tomorrow afternoon before I realize I've missed 8 calls and stuff like that. So, and it's a pain in the butt to turn it down. So you're going to have to bear with a couple of dings that might come in. So, sorry, I still got this cough nagging today. And it's going to be for a couple more weeks at least. So hopefully we're coming out of this stupid sinus chest cold thing. It kind of affects my voice for radio, but not bad. It's mostly just kicked my butt for a while. Rainy's got it too. So my wife has had her butt kicked as well. And the kids kind of get it, but then they're in and out of it so quick you never even notice it. I wish my body had the resilience it had 50 years ago. Wouldn't that be nice? And so tonight, I was just in the middle of saying, if you're listening on the radio, you can join us for the video simulcast of this program over on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the channel and click the little bell. You'll get notifications. And you can also hit the join button, which will show you 3 ways you can join this channel and help support it from anywhere from $1 a month to $15 a month. So there it is. Bing, bang, boom. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Oh, and if you're over on Facebook, you can catch this show in several different places on Facebook. You can also catch it on Twitter, my Twitter page. You can, the only other place you can catch it live is, no, I haven't got it set up for Instagram yet, but we're working on that. So for the meantime, welcome everybody. Glad you could make it in here tonight. And I am going to take a moment to read. Remember, I got these cards that Rainey gave me a few weeks ago. And I read one the other night. It's this little pack. She came home with it from the thrift store where she goes and is kind of on call and fills in over at the thrift store every now and then and picks up stuff. So she got this little deck of cards called Affirmators. And it's 50 affirmative cards to help you help yourself. And I think they're not so, it's not like oracle cards or tarot cards or anything like that. It's not telling a fortune or giving you some wild information. But just as tarot cards or anything else, you could probably put a little bit of your esoteric knowledge to it. It's just affirmative cards. It's things, some of them are a little tongue-in-cheek, some of them are cheeky, and some of them are a bit serious. So we did a couple of these, Rainey and I did one on the show the other night, and we just take this little deck and we'll shuffle it up. We'll see what our affirmator is for today, at least for this show. Now I'm shuffling in things like, oh, look at that. I'm shuffling in the card that gives you the instructions on how to use them. So if we draw that one, we'll redraw. And so let's see what these say. This is a great way to, I had the matchstick, the boldness, becoming bold and looking for things to make yourself bolder. This is kind of the same thing. It's kind of a neat thing. So there, we've got them shuffled up. Let's draw the card off the top and let's see what it has to say for today. And I'm going to need my glasses. All right. This one is called Divine Timing. What does this card say? It says, everything is timing. My light is really poor right here where my keyboard would be. Everything is timing, and timing is everything. Gladly, I release my concern over timing and let things happen when and as they will. I trust that the divine schedule makers know what they're doing. It can take a long time to reach divine middle management. So there you go. That's the affirmator for today. Divine timing. Maybe give divine timing a chance and boot your own self-timing. I know sometimes the biggest killers that Rainey and I have around here are the things where we say, I'm not meeting my schedule. Tonight is a for instance. Earlier this evening, Rainey ran Rowan to her concert where she was playing flute. And if you're a parent, you know what it's like to go to a grade school, well, in this case, middle school, 5th grade concert. And I couldn't go because I needed to drive Ellery and Flynn to Scouts about a half an hour after they left for the concert. So we stuck around here. And then I went out to start up the van, which I had not started. I haven't run the van since I was out of town last weekend, a week ago. So I started it up, and it was absolutely bone dead. Not even a click, 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 click. It was just turn the key and you got nothing. And so what I think happened, Rowan, to try to earn a couple of extra bucks every now and then, said, I'm going to go out and clean the van and vacuum it and wipe it down and stuff like that. Okay. Well, I think she left the lights on the inside, or a light on the inside. And since I hadn't started the thing in over a week, one time in a week, I think that little light drained that battery dead. So I just texted Rainey and I said, hey, no can do on bringing the kids. So our timing gets disturbed. We get wrenches in the gears. We get things happening that don't happen. And sometimes if you're too meticulous about setting your timing, too meticulous about meeting your schedule. Now, granted, there's things we have to meet a schedule on. I understand that. But sometimes timing takes on a mind of its own. And maybe there's things we have to learn, lessons we have to learn, things that we have to do that might not have been on our agenda. And so if you just sit back in those times and not let it eat your soul, you might be able to open your eyes and see that there's maybe a greater purpose. Maybe it's not even a big thing. Maybe it's a greater purpose for a little thing. So there it is. I don't know what the greater purpose was tonight. Maybe, who knows? Maybe in the greater scheme, we all would have died in a car wreck tonight or something. And so the mishap and the angst of having a battery dead and keeping you down for a couple of hours until the other car got back here. I wasn't going to call AAA for that. Maybe that saved a life. Well, we may never know. Maybe in a parallel universe, we all died in a car wreck. Maybe in a parallel universe, it was a spaceship. I don't know what it was. But anyway, there you go. There's the affirmator for today. Don't let time run you. You run your time. And sometimes just take time to have time. And don't worry about time escaping you. There might be a divine plan in it. I was just going to say that too, said Matt Finn. Maybe what Leslie said. Don't even joke about that, Scotty, even though you're right. Yeah, I'm not even, what do you say? I could say maybe in an alternate universe, my starship ran out of dilithium crystals. Boom. It could have been that. And so we had to wait for a freighter to come by and tow us to the next starport. There you go. So time is more precious than money, says Sarah Yusuf. Yes, it's like I'm often reminded of the irreplaceable moments of time in our life. And, more so now. Now that I'm convinced I have fewer days ahead than I have behind me, unless I live to be 124 years old. So time is fleeting. Life is fleeting. We can get all esoteric about it and all serious about it, but you're right. Sarah, time is a precious commodity. Starbase, that's the word I was looking for. So Michelle Cannon-Free is currently watching Lost in Space. Which version are you watching, Michelle? Are you watching the old one, the original Irwin Allen production, or are you watching one of the new remakes? Life is ephemeral, she says. Yes, that's very true. Leslie said, me too. I'm officially a Medicare recipient now. How about that? I think I am too. So I'm officially on Social Security now too. How about that? I'm old enough to be on Social Security, but I still work. So that's going to be a precarious balance here. We'll have to see how that works. So I just got my very first Social Security payment a couple of weeks ago. And so, it is what it is. Who knows? That may not last long. I may make too much money. You can only be impoverished at the level of money you can earn if you're on Social Security. So we'll see how that all works. And maybe I just work for free for my wife, and it's all her business. So we'll have to see. Hey, Camel Tube, the remakes were interesting, but not as endearing as Bill Mumy days. I agree with you, Camel Tube. Loved Bill Mumy. I follow him on my Instagram, and I see a lot of his posts. Those were good days. I also liked Guy Williamson as Dr. Robinson. the new one, the new miniseries or second season they've done now of Lost in Space on Netflix or something like that. It was cool as a standalone series, but I didn't like some of the things they did to it. The characters weren't as strong. Well, I take that back. The characters were strong enough. I didn't like what they did to the robot. I didn't like what they did to Dr. Robinson. They've got him as a military guy that's kind of dumb, and his wife is the woke producers of this. The wife is the lead scientist, not just a mom, and which was the original concept of family in space, coming out of the early 1960s. Nothing wrong with a smart woman and the woman who's the doctor that was in the developing all that stuff, the PhD. But you know what? So was Professor Robinson. So he was a pretty smart dude in the original series. Leslie says, I refuse to watch remakes, especially when I love the original. Yeah, I tend to be that way because I pick apart. But I will tell you this, while it's not a remake so much, love shows like Strange New Worlds with Anson Mount as Captain Pike from the very original Star Trek, the very first episode of the original Star Trek. So really good series. And there's so much throwback, even though tech, production value, the art of it, everything is so spectacularly done. But it hails back to the original so often, and it's so good that I enjoy it. I agree, not what I expected or hoped for, too. So, anyway, let's get into talking about Cyrus the Great. Not Miley Cyrus, as Field Guy had hoped tonight, but a different Cyrus. And this is Cyrus. He's mentioned in the biblical accounts. He was the emperor of Persia. He was the emperor who, in Persia, who sent home the Israelites after captivity. The Babylonians did that too, but we'll get into that a little bit. And so here's the big question. Isaiah, the prophet in the Old Testament, he's got a book named after himself. I think there's more than one of them, but there's only one in the canonical Bible. That Isaiah, why does he call Cyrus the Great, the non-Jewish king of Persia, Israel's anointed one? And he uses the term Messiah, the term that we has watered down to mean Christ in the Latinized version of the word in Hebrew. So the Persian emperor Cyrus is honored as the only foreigner in the Bible to be identified as the Messiah or the anointed one of God, of Yahweh, YHWH, as it's spelled out with no vowels, but the name of God, Yahweh, which translates to Jehovah. Jehovah! I always want to say that from Monty Python and The Life of Brian whenever I say Jehovah. I just want to do that. I want to be in a serious circle of theologians and talk about, Cyrus was the king that was called the anointed one of Jehovah. So Isaiah tells us that Yahweh spoke to his Messiah, to Cyrus, his Messiah, whom, and it quotes, whom I, Yahweh, took by his right hand to subdue nations before him. That's in the book of Isaiah, chapter 45 and verse 1. Hey, Elderberry, good to see you. Billy Ray Cyrus. Yeah, he was along with Mel Gibson in the 80s in the original Lethal Weapon, one of the few cool-looking dudes that had a mullet. So now the title Messiah means anointed. It's an anglicization. Try to say that. Anglicization. There you go. It's an anglicized version of the Hebrew word meshiach or jyvm. And in Greek, it's rendered Christos, which in the English means Christ. And so many people are anointed in the Hebrew Bible, and many are referred to as the Messiah or anointed ones. The high priest is called the anointed priest in Leviticus. God tells Elijah to anoint two different men as kings of their people. Hazael is the king of Aram in 1 Kings, and Jehu, the son of Nimshi, is king over Israel. So God also instructs Elijah to anoint his own successor, Elisha, the son of Shaphat, as prophet in 1 Kings 19. And at this point in time, the term Messiah or anointed one did not refer to the apocalyptic savior of mankind. It had a different meaning then. So remember, the coming Messiah was referred to as the kinsman redeemer, which we saw as early as Garden of Eden stories. But these people are called Messiah or anointed ones, but they aren't designated Yahweh's Messiah, Jehovah's Messiah, as Cyrus is. And this is much less common a phrase. Includes variants such as my anointed or his anointed, always referring to Yahweh, the God of Israel. And it appears only 30 times in the Hebrew Bible, and always in reference to legitimate anointed kings of Judah. And it's applied to Saul. Remember King Saul. Excuse me, I get that rattle in there, and it causes a nice coughing jag. You're asking, Sarah, was that before or after Egypt? I'm not sure what that question was referring to. So let's guess. After. So it's after Egypt is when Cyrus lived. So let's see. Now, the variants, my anointed, his anointed, so on. Saul, we're talking about King Saul, who David took over the throne from King Saul. But Saul, 11 times in 1 Samuel, in that book in the Old Testament, is referred to as God's anointed. And to David 3 times. And to an unnamed king of either the united monarchy of Judah in 1 Samuel. It also refers to the Judahite king in Lamentations, that book in the Old Testament. In 8 Psalms, it's mentioned. In Habakkuk's prayer, in his book. And in the prayer of Hannah in 1 Samuel. But in Isaiah 45, verse 1, the phrase refers to Cyrus, a Persian monarch. Now, if you're not familiar right off the top of your head, Persia would be Iran, Iraq. I'm a little blank on that. Is it specifically Iran? Specifically Iraq? Iran has, or Iraq has some of the earliest cities. So I think it's referring to Iraq. So the non-Jew Cyrus the Great, he lived from 559 to 530 BCE. And yes, you're not supposed to interrupt, and I'm ignoring you, but now what? No, you cannot. Not on here. I love you. Good night.
Hi.
Hi. Bye. You're not supposed to be down here. All right? Oh, listen to that spanky butt. See ya. Bye. I love you. See you in a while. It's okay, and it's not okay. It's not okay because we say don't. It's okay because I love it, and I love it when she comes in. But at the same time, you get it. You know, you've heard me say it before. So, the non-Jew, Cyrus the Great, he lived from 559 to 530. Oh, well, that's when he ruled over Persia. And Isaiah calls him Yahweh's anointed. He was the Persian king of Fars, F-A-R-S, a southern province of present-day Iran. There you go. It's Iran. And the Greek historians and the chronicle of the last Babylonian king Nabonidus tells us that in 553 BCE, Cyrus rebelled against the ruling Medes, and then a major power in the Near East. And by 550, he had defeated them, imprisoned their king, and his maternal grandfather Astiges, and he then turned to the west, and by 546 he had defeated the wealthy king Croesus of Lydia. That's in modern Turkey. And the Lydian capital of Sardis fell to him along with the other cities of Asia Minor. Now Cyrus then turned his attention to the most powerful kingdom in Central Asia, Babylon. And by the end of 539, he'd taken Babylon and captured its king, Nabonidus. And the Persian Empire, founded by Cyrus, extended from the Aegean to Central Asia. And it was probably in the fall. Pardon me, folks. I got to go shut my door. I'm sorry you had to hear that. Nobody pays attention. It's like in my house, there's a total disregard for whatever's going on the radio if somebody wants to get mad and swear and do stuff out in the other room. So pardon me for that familial interlude. Let me take a deep cleansing breath. Woosa. All right, here we go. All right, back at it. I think I can find my place. Here we go. All right. Now, it was probably the fall of 538 that Cyrus issued a decree, and he permitted the Jews of Babylon exile to return to Jerusalem to rebuild their temple. And according to the book of Ezra, Cyrus told the Jews this. This is in the book of Ezra in the Old Testament. Cyrus says of Persia, "Thus said King Cyrus of Persia, Yahweh, God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has charged me with building him a house in Jerusalem." Stop there for a second. Since when did a foreign king ever get asked by God to build a temple in the holy city of Israel? Well, right here. Apparently it was Cyrus of Persia. He says, God has charged me with building him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Any one of you of all his people, may God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem that is in Judah and build the house of Yahweh, God of Israel, the God that is in Jerusalem. And all who stay behind wherever he may be living, let the people of his place assist him with silver, gold, goods, and livestock, besides the free will offering of the house of God that's in Jerusalem. That's in the book of Ezra. You can find that in the first chapter of Ezra. Now, according to Ezra, Cyrus also refurbished the temple in Jerusalem, which is where, of course, the Dome of the Rock, the Mosque of Omar, stands today in Jerusalem. But in the first year of King Cyrus of Babylon, King Cyrus issued an order to rebuild this house of God, also the silver and gold vessels of the house of God that Nebuchadnezzar had taken away from the temple in Jerusalem and brought to the temple in Babylon. Do you suppose that's where the Ark of the Covenant ended up at one point? King Cyrus released them from the temple in Babylon to be given to the one called Sheshbazzar, whom he had appointed governor. And he said to him, "Take these vessels, go deposit them in the temple in Jerusalem, and let the house of God be rebuilt on its original site." So would you say at this point, when you're reading these things and all the praise that Cyrus is giving to the God of the Jews, to Yahweh, rebuilding their temple, is this a benevolent thing he's doing as the ruler of the known world at that time? Is it, did he become what we might call today a believer? Was he a follower of Jehovah? Back then, before Messiah, before the time of Christ, according to the Bible, at least the New Testament, you had to be a Jew in order to be what you would call today saved. You would have to have been a Jew and worshiping in the temple, sacrificing in the temple. So this is really interesting. So he let the house of God be built on its original site. Now, Isaiah also mentions Cyrus in connection with rebuilding the temple. Isaiah says this, Thus said Yahweh, your Redeemer, who formed you in the womb. It is I, Yahweh, who made everything, who alone stretched out the heavens and unaided spread out the world, the earth. That's an interesting verse all by itself about creation from a theological point of view. God, I, Yahweh, who made everything, who alone stretched out the heavens and unaided spread out the earth. The same who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, he shall fulfill all my purposes. He shall say of Jerusalem, she shall be built, and to the temple, your foundation shall be found again. That's in Isaiah 44. This is God, according to the prophet Isaiah, talking about a foreign king, a conqueror of Israel at one point. Believe it or not, some do see the value of religious intolerance or tolerance, says Sarah Yusuf. Lots of parallels in the Quran. There you go. So, who is this prophet who identifies Cyrus as Yahweh's shepherd and anointed? We have to be very careful at this point to distinguish between there's two Isaiahs, both in the same book of the Bible. Scholars label them as first Isaiah and second Isaiah. So the first Isaiah, who's credited with writing a lot of the book, Isaiah 1 through chapter 39, lived in Jerusalem during the reigns of Ahaz and Hezekiah. And the second Isaiah, author of Isaiah 40 through 65, probably lived in Babylon during the late exilic period, the time of the exile in Babylon, the late 6th century BCE. And we know he wrote after 539 because Isaiah mentions Cyrus the Great, who wrote the second Isaiah. And he wrote the second Isaiah. So, second Isaiah believed the Jews had completed their punishment for whatever sins they'd committed, and he encouraged those exiled in Babylon and Egypt to return home to Judah by saying this. This is Isaiah chapter 40, verses 1 and 2. Comfort, O comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and declare to her that her term of service is over, that her iniquity is expiated, for she has received the hand of Yahweh double for all her sins. And now Yahweh has resolved, he who formed me in the womb to be his servant, to bring back Jacob to himself. Jacob, another name for Israel, of course. That Israel may be restored to him, and that I may be honored in Yahweh's sight. My God has been my strength. I will make all my mountains a road, and my highways shall be built up. Look, these are coming from afar, these from the north and the west, and these from the land of Sinim, modern Aswan. Shout, O heavens, and rejoice, O earth. Break into shouting, O hills, for Yahweh has comforted his people and has taken back his afflicted ones in love. Then in Isaiah 49, in Isaiah 49. What does it mean to be called Yahweh's anointed? As Cyrus is called by the second Isaiah in the book of Isaiah. Now, as we've seen, the title always refers to a ruler of Judah. To the biblical writers, however, the term Yahweh's anointed is more than a title. It also connotes a theology. Yahweh's anointed is the legitimate king appointed and protected by God. And in the book of Psalms, he's idealized, he's mythical. According to Psalm 2, which has long been recognized as a poem recited to the coronation of a Judahite king, the king is anointed by Yahweh during the installation process and says, Yahweh says, but I have installed my king on Zion, my holy mountain. Let me tell of the decree. Yahweh said to me, you are my son. I have fathered you this day. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your domain, your estate the limits of the earth. You can smash them with an iron mace and shatter them like a potter's ware. That's Psalm 2, where you find that. Yahweh is given to his anointed king all the nations of the earth as his inheritance. And this is this theological theme of sovereignty over the nations. And it's echoed in Psalm 18 again. Here, the anointed one is the reigning Davidic king. And he says, Yahweh lives. Blessed is my rock. Exalted be God, my deliverer, the God who has vindicated me and made people subject to me. He accords great victories to his king and keeps faith with his anointed, with David and his offspring forever. That's Psalm 18. Now, back in Psalm 2, this psalm describes Yahweh giving the anointed victory and placing him at the head of the nations. The anointed being capitalized, the anointed victory, not the anointed victory. He gives the anointed one victory and places him at the head of nations. Similarly, Psalm 20 stipulates that it's not chariots or horses that bring the anointed one victory, but reliance on Yahweh. It says this, may we shout for joy in your victory, arrayed by standards in the name of our God. May Yahweh fulfill your every wish. Now I know that Yahweh will give victory to his anointed. He will answer him from his heavenly sanctuary with the mighty victories of his right arm. They call on chariots and they call on horses, but we call upon the name of Yahweh our God. They collapse, they lie fallen, but we rally and gather strength. O Yahweh, grant victory. May the King answer us when we call. That's Psalm 20. Now, it's something that occurs to me as I'm going through all these Psalms and these different passages. Do you notice how focused these Old Testament texts are with Israel on their ruler? The ruler, the winning of victories, giving victory into his hand, giving rule into his hand, all of these things are granted. And it's very focused. It's like, while there is theology wrapped in there, you notice a lot of Old Testament is built around sexual laws. It's built around Levitical law, of course. And the history is built around the subjugation of Israel. It was like this cycle we used to mention when I was studying back in school, that Israel, right with God, and God gives them things, gives them favor. And then they fall into sin, and then God sends somebody to knock them on their butts, and they repent, and they go back to being right with God, and then it starts all over again. This cycle keeps going around and around and around. Camel Tube says, the Dead End Collective. I would tend to agree. They all use same script with different names and use common events like a flood, etc. In my opinion, others for their religion. Yeah, you're onto something there. I think a lot of your religions, Camel, have similar mythologies, similar events. And these are some of the things that made me step back when I looked at them and say, wow, the things that I claim to be my own and the closest to are different versions of other religions. And so it's interesting. It's a different study, and I don't mean to comment on that so much tonight. So then let's move on with this. How then, knowing the full theology that's associated with the term Yahweh's anointed, could second Isaiah we'll call him, have applied this title to Cyrus, the Persian emperor? So whenever Cyrus or his son and successor, Cambyses, we've mentioned Cambyses recently, John Ward and I were working on a book on the lost armies of Cambyses, which took place in about 525 BCE. A totally different story. But Cambyses' successor, Darius, 486 BCE, extended the mighty Persian Empire, and local priests of powerful temples would apply the titles and the theologies of their own kings to their Persian conquerors. Second Isaiah appears to have done the very same thing. After Cambyses successfully invaded Egypt, the local priests hailed him as Pharaoh, or King of Upper and Lower Egypt. I don't think they had much choice at that point, because Cambyses put to death the entire royal family, the Pharaoh and his family, in 525, when he raided and sacked Egypt. What are the priests going to do? Say, we resist you. If he took down the Pharaoh and his family, he's going to take down the priests too. But he successfully invaded Egypt, and the local priests end up calling him Pharaoh. And so in an autobiographical inscription, the priest Uja, or Orisnet is another name, a former admiral who served in a temple dedicated to Neith, the mother of the supreme god Ra, wrote this in Egypt. The great chief of all foreign lands, Cambyses, came to Egypt, and the foreign peoples of every foreign land were with him. And when he had conquered this land in its entirety, they established themselves in it, and he was the great ruler of Egypt and the great chief of all foreign lands. His Majesty assigned to me the office of chief physician. He made me live at his side as companion and administrator of the palace. I composed his official pharaonic title, to wit, his name, King or Pharaoh of Upper and Lower Egypt, Mesuti Ra, or offspring of Ra. So another priestly Egyptian inscription identifies Cambyses with very typical combination of these pharaonic titles. One of the titles was the Horus who unites the two lands, King of Upper and Lower Egypt, son of Ra, the good God, Lord of the two lands. I love these long titles they gave. We still have some of those around today with royalty around the world. Could you imagine? Silence! Entering the room is now the Horus who unites the two lands, King of Upper and Lower Egypt, son of Ra, the good God, Lord of the two lands. Hear ye, say huzzah. So, this is, we have these big, magnificent titles. This is just demonstrating in history that the same thing has taken place, like you're seeing Isaiah do for Cyrus the Great. But this Egyptian sarcophagus shows Cambyses in pharaonic dress, kneeling beside an offering table. And the accompanying inscription notes that Cambyses, the Persian king, is performing the appropriate rites to conduct his father, the Apis bull, identified with Osiris, the god of the underworld, to the good land of the West. Now, the Apis bull, that's if some of you remember back to a couple of trips that John and I took to Egypt. And in 2013 and 2014, we went to the Serapeum, which is really at the same site as the stepped pyramid of Dozier, where I had that vision, that place. But it's all underground. And it's the tombs of the Apis bull, where they would have the ceremonies of the Apis bull, and they would sacrifice the Apis bull. And there were these big granite sarcophagi, hewn out of pieces of granite, smooth, full of hieroglyphics, down inside, underground, into this long hallway with all these different tombs off to the sides of the Apis bull. So they've got Cambyses, the Persian king in Egypt, as Pharaoh, sacrificing the Apis bull. Now, after Darius rose to power, that would be the son of Cambyses, he cut a canal, which was kind of an early Suez Canal. And I showed you a map when we were talking about Amenhotep and the Sea of Reeds and so on, north of the Red Sea, how the Suez Canal runs north from the tip of the Red Sea to the Mediterranean. And it's not all that far. But he cut a early canal, Darius did, to connect the Red Sea to the Nile River. And the Red Sea runs kind of north north-northwest, and the Nile runs north. And so he connected the two over the eastern desert or through the eastern desert. Probably near the Memphis area, which is the very northern, which would be parallel to the northern tip of the Red Sea. So the commemorative stelae erected along the route identified him, Darius, as one born of Neith, or Ra's mother, and as he who Ra placed at his, Ra's, throne in order to achieve what he, Ra, had begun. So in Babylon 2, Cambyses was hailed as the Babylonian crown prince, later as the king. And the Babylonian Chronicle indicates that during the reign of Cyrus, the guy we're talking about tonight, his son Cambyses assumed the role of the crown prince in the New Year's Akitu festival, and a ceremony that's reserved for the legitimate Babylonian monarch. Now, during the ceremony, Cambyses went to the temple of the god Nabu and prepared to lead him to sanctuary called Ezegel, and of their chief god Marduk. And you've heard of Marduk before. Cambyses was immediately named king of Babylon. Several texts from this period are dated to the first year of Cyrus, king of lands, and Cambyses, king of Babylon. So why did the priests of Marduk allow Cyrus to participate as crown prince in the Akitu festival? Why did the Egyptian priests identify Cambyses and Darius as pharaoh? First, as already mentioned, self-interest. These priests tied their own successes to the success of their conquerors. The Egyptian priest Uja, or Orisnet, whose inscription is quoted in part above, had been admiral of the Egyptian fleet under pharaohs of Amasis. And Psammetichus, in 526 to 525, he's the guy that was killed by Cambyses. He lost his military title with the Persian conquest, but by supporting Cambyses, he was able to retain a high-ranking and influential position at court. So according to his inscription, now in the Vatican, the former admiral became royal seal bearer, sole companion, true beloved king's friend, the scribe, inspector of council scribes, chief scribe of the great outer hall. And those are titles that Cambyses himself may have conferred on him. Now, second, the priests recognized the restoration of their temples depended on the goodwill of the Persian leader. So the famous Cyrus cylinder, a 10-inch long inscribed clay barrel bearing the story of Babylon's liberation by Cyrus, tells how Cyrus, with the help of Babylonian god Marduk, restored worship at the temples where Nabonidus had removed the cult images and brought them to Babylon. So from Babylon up to the city of Ashur and Susa, Akkad, and the land of Eshnuna, to the towns of Zamban, Miturnu, Dur, up to the region of the Gutians, I return to these sacred cult cities on the other side of the Tigris, the sanctuaries of which have been ruins for a long time, the gods who live in them, and established for them eternal sanctuaries. I also gathered all their inhabitants, returned them to their habitations. Furthermore, I resettled upon the command of Marduk, the great lord, all the gods of Sumer and Akkad, whom Nabonidus had brought into Babylon in the anger of the Lord of the gods, unharmed in their chapels, the places which make them happy. And more importantly for the Marduk priesthood located in the city of Babylon, Cyrus removed the stigma of corvée labor. So he says, as to the inhabitants of Babylon, whom he, Nabonidus, against the will of the gods, made them pull the yoke, which for them was not appropriate for their exhaustion, I provided rest. I removed the yoke. So similarly, a generation later, Uja, his inscription tells us how Cambyses cleansed the temple of Neith, where Uja served and restored worship there. And as British historian Alan Lloyd has noted, Uja took pains to demonstrate that Cambyses accepted the traditional role of pharaoh. He acted the way a legitimate pharaoh should act, that is, he participated in the worship of the Egyptian gods. And there's so much more to this, and I want to jump a little bit ahead to get into other areas, to get back to Cyrus here. But Cambyses' willingness and his capacity to adopt the Egyptian model of kingship seemed crucial to Ujah's willingness to collaborate. And his willingness to collaborate. No, I think it would be, Fat Tony should be very happy should you collaborate. So Ra would never have let the Persian king conquer Egypt, according to the Egyptians. And Cambyses could never have restored the worship of Ra in Egypt. So similarly, in Babylon, when Cyrus returned the cult statues that had been removed under the last Babylonian king Nabonidus and restored the sanctuaries, the local priests could interpret this as a sign of their God's joy at Cyrus's rule. And see how everything got religion tied into it. The religion of the priesthood prospered when the emperor or the king prospered. So it was in their best interest to make sure that he was praised and that they made their gods praise him. Throughout the whole Near East, conquered peoples interpreted their fate very similarly. When a town was conquered or destroyed, the devastation was attributed to the gods' displeasure in the citizens. And the restoration of order, particularly the restoration of the city to its former glory in the presence of the god's statue back in the sanctuary, was seen as proof that the local god had participated in the conquest and had negotiated his own return and restored order. It's kind of things like we see that even now. Remember when AIDS was a big thing back in the 80s? If you were old enough to remember that as an adult, that was a judgment of the gods. Of God on homosexuals. And so we still do this today to a certain extent. The gods are responsible for the rise or the fall, or God is responsible for the rise or the fall. So it's an interesting similarity. So, 2nd Isaiah gave Cyrus the royal Judean title of Yahweh, just like Cambyses was made pharaoh. The priests of Marduk in Babylon made him the crown prince. 2nd Isaiah gave Cyrus the royal Judean title of Yahweh's anointed, because he really believed Cyrus was the legitimate ruler anointed by Yahweh. And so with the name went the entire royal Judean court theology associated with it for Cyrus. 2nd Isaiah applies to Cyrus the same themes associated with Yahweh's anointed. And hold on, I covered up my clock. I got to see where I'm at here. Oh, hey, yeah, we got about 5 minutes left, so let's just keep it going, huh? And we'll get there, folks. So, sorry for that pause. 2nd Isaiah applies to Cyrus the same themes associated with Yahweh's anointed in Psalms. Victory over the enemy, nations falling under his feet. In Isaiah 41 and 45, we read of Yahweh's selection of Cyrus as the victor who would subdue all nations. And there's lengthy passages here out of Psalms. It says, now watch how they speak of Cyrus. Who has roused a victor from the east? Cyrus. Summoned him to his service, has delivered up nations to him, and trodden sovereigns down, has rendered their swords like dust, their bows like windblown straw. He pursues them. He goes unscathed. No shackle is placed on his feet. Who has wrought and achieved this? He who announced the generations from the start. I, Yahweh, who was first and will be the last as well, or the Alpha and the Omega. And I have roused him from the north, and he has come from the sunrise, one who invokes my name. He has trampled rulers like mud, like a potter treading clay. Who foretold this from the start that we may note it? From aforetime that we might say, he is right. Not one foretold, not one announced. No one has heard your utterance. And then in Isaiah it says, thus says Yahweh to Cyrus, his anointed one, whose right hand he has grasped, treading down nations before him, uncovering the loins of kings, opening doors before him, and letting no gate stay shut. I will march before you and level the hills that loom up. I will shatter doors of bronze and cut down iron bars. So this incredible imagery used to describe Yahweh's assistance to the Davidic monarch David is now applied to Cyrus, a Persian monarch. And in 2nd Isaiah, Yahweh subdues kings for Cyrus. He causes Cyrus to trample on rulers like mortar, like the potter treads the clay. So says the book of Psalms. And so in 2nd Isaiah, Yahweh makes it clear that it is now Cyrus and not the Davidic monarch who will fulfill Yahweh's purposes. The above passage concludes as follows in Isaiah. It says, "It was I who roused him, Cyrus, for victory, and who level all roads for him. He shall rebuild my city and let my exiled people go, without price and without payment, said Yahweh of hosts." So, like Uzzah and the priests of Marduk, 2nd Isaiah is delivering up the Persian conqueror the entire theology that had been defined for the local king only. Self-interest was no doubt one reason for his actions, but not his sole motivation. Like his counterparts in Egypt and in Babylon, 2nd Isaiah was convinced that Cyrus was in actuality the genuine Judean king, the legitimate heir to David's throne, Yahweh's anointed, his Messiah, his Christ. He believed this because Cyrus was able to do what a legitimate king must do. He brought back authentic order to the world. Cyrus rebuilt the Jerusalem temple and permitted the Jews to return to worship their God in Zion. So this is where and how a Persian emperor becomes the non-Jewish Messiah of Israel, or the anointed one of Israel. And I thought this was all very interesting history. And for the moment, we got to get out of here. We'll be back with the Captain's Cabin over on our YouTube channel. So all of you who are here on the radio, live long and prosper.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Well, hey, folks, welcome back to the program. Welcome back to the Captain's Cabin. We're not going to go for a full hour tonight. We're probably not even going to go for a half an hour. We may not even go for 15 minutes, which is a quarter of that time. Mostly because I got stuff going on upstairs I got to go tend to. And I've had a long day. And so we're going to kind of call it after that show. That was one of what I enjoy. I enjoy digging into the history of things, to finding out why things work the way they do. I wanted to know why in the Old Testament was Cyrus elevated so highly, being a foreign king. Well, there was your answer. I hope that was enjoyable for you. It's history. If it wasn't just an hour talking on the radio, could you imagine doing this in a classroom and having a fun time with it? Enjoying this stuff? I'm glad you all liked it. And I didn't get much chance to look at comments, mostly because I was getting through the material. I had to cut some out. So, okay, fine. Good night. Well, be well, everyone. And remember to do something good for someone. Okay, fine. Good night. What's up your butt, Uncle Dave? So, did I miss something? So, and I can talk to him that way because he's Uncle Dave. So, I have to keep in mind oral Torah mixed with Babylonian religion during captivity, forming the Kabbalistic priests who usurped power from the Levites. Yeah, there's that. They all were out for their own good. You look at something as well known as Akhenaten and breaking away from kind of the pantheon of Egyptian gods and the priests and moving a few hundred miles upriver or downriver to the north and founding the city of Amarna and had the new Akhenaten's new religion, to the sun god. And that lasted just really the course of his reign and a little bit into his son's reign, and Tutankhamun. And the priests were the ones that needed to be placated. He ruffled a lot of feathers with the priests when he did that, and they smashed all this shit. Even at John and Maria's quarry site of Gebel El Silsila, there's quarries with sphinxes in them. Now, don't think of the big major sphinx that you see in all the pictures at Giza. Small sphinx, about the size of, an SUV. And there were a bunch of those that are partially finished in the kind of the grotto of what would have been Akhenaten. And there's several of these sphinxes smashed to bits that were partially carved out, totally carved out of rock, just rough hewn and ready for fine detailing. They were all smashed to smithereens and stuff all over. It's kind of interesting walking through there. You're in the middle of the desert. There's nothing there. There's no tourists there. There's no pay booth or anything like that. You're on the east bank of the Nile at Gebel El Silsila, a big quarry site. And you're walking through there, and there's all these ruined things like that, which is really interesting when you're there. But that is the same kind of thing. You had the priests. When you didn't appease the priests and the priestly caste, they had a lot of money and they controlled a lot. And they didn't necessarily have the armies, but man, you got on their bad sides. Same thing with the priests. They needed to keep on the good side of the ruler who had the power. So interesting stuff. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Scotty.
How you doing?
I was really enjoying today's show.
Oh, fantastic. I'm glad you did. Thank you.
So,
Bingo.
Yeah.
So what's going on with you?
No, I was just, thinking about it because in a certain way, it's kind of like the whole anointed Messiah was outsourced to an Asian.
Yeah.
As far as getting stuff done and, putting things into place where, the further history is even furthered. Right. Because the Persians are responsible for giving us things like our current number system and math and all this stuff. The contributions to culture, but
yes,
but I mean it's interesting because and I'll have to do more research into the Cyrus in particular. But what I think I was able to glean from what you were talking about, he carried some of the very different leadership ideals and cultures that were, going rampant throughout the day. One being religious tolerance.
Yes.
Being tolerant of religion, being able to work with the local priests, which, the religion has their own power structure over there. So, if he had, if they were working, like we were talking about with the Egyptians, that let them do what they do to maintain themselves, and then, just be over it all, that seems to be far less destructive, instead of try to oppress people. And because usually the culture is you're the religion of whoever rules, right? I mean,
yes,
as far as that, and with the whole idea of religious tolerance, it made him more venerated. They're not pushing them to not worship Yahweh or some other foreign deity like Marduk or whoever. And I think, there's that appreciation of, getting like you were saying, getting the gold back to set up the temples and putting everything into place. That's it's more like a respect type of thing. And as far as, saying, I mean, I took issue with the saying, calling him a foreign king, because under his worldview, God is the creator of everything. So, how can he be foreign? And I think in a way they're trying to acknowledge, the various differences of different tribes and different peoples, that they all contribute to this thing that we call life. As far, because if you look from the macrocosm to the microcosm of, from the atomic structures, it's all complex. I mean, it's not like it's linear, A, B, C, this is how it's supposed to be,
right.
As far as that. So he's a really interesting, figure, because especially in that point in time, because this is obviously, pre-Islamic as well, with the because monotheism is a late concept, so they're working with the different polytheistic pantheons, that have similarities, and kind of like you see with later with appropriation between Christianity and paganism. They like with Ireland, they incorporated pagan elements into the types of crosses, the sun, acquiring their sites of power, putting a church where they used to keep their altars, that sort of thing.
Yes,
it's the whole appropriation to make it easier to do, because it's like you have like muscle memory, where you go to the church every Sunday, and instead of worshiping your Celtic deity, you would worship the Virgin Mary or something like that.
Right. Right.
So I mean, it's really interesting. So
I think it's all very interesting stuff. Matt Finn put up here, it would be beneficial for the Kabbalists to align with Cyrus while positioning themselves to the top and into the temple priesthood. Very true.
Yeah.
And he says these same bloodlines Christ came to straighten out. Now, I think that that's an after view in theology, Matt Finn, only because Christ came in his own theology. He said, he basically said coming to offer the kingdom, but because they rejected it, there was a different plan. So on a theological or a spiritual basis, we can claim that he was there to straighten out those bloodlines. But as far as the kings, he wasn't there with the plan that the Caesar of Rome was going to accept him and he would elevate him to some status as God. So it was interesting. It's a very interesting point of view, Matt. He was a military man, says Matt Finney, goes on here. I think it was a deal for control. If the priest could keep control over the people in region, Cyrus would give them their temple. Bing, bang, boom. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. And so what does the prophet Isaiah call him? The exalted of Yahweh. And he attributes to Cyrus all these same titles and titulars and ascribes to him all the things that were ascribed to David, the king of Israel, the once and future king of Israel, you could call him. and the Davidic line. So very interesting stuff historically. Yeah, and that to me is part of this element, Sarah, where we see that there are true believers and those who are truly spiritually aligned with Yahweh or whatever religion throughout ancient culture. Mm-hmm. And then there are those who are aligned with him while he is in power and the one governing things until the next ruler comes along that benefits them. And then they've got to kiss ass with that guy in order to keep their temple and their religion. So does that mean that they were true believers in their religion and they did whatever they could to keep that religion alive, that theology working, that temple a place of worship? Or were they opportunists, as a lot of the priests were in Egypt, to keep their caste alive, their caste of priests and their position whole? So right. It's very interesting.
I mean, only God knows what's in the hearts of men. I mean, whether they're being true or sycophantic,
Right.
But and you also, in a way, have to, at least for those people, they have justify. Okay, this guy is constantly winning, whether he has militaristic prowess or just knows how to arrange things to make sure everything works. So the one who knows how to work it the best, they're going to be venerated.
Right. Hey, Amanda Boyari or Amanda Berry, as I also know her. A good point, but she says Yahweh's another name for Allah. Except Yahweh came first. And Allah was named later. So maybe Allah is another name for Yahweh. So confusing.
Presumably God came first, for the universe and all that stuff. I mean, the labels come later. So,
right. But who was Allah before Muhammad named him Allah?
Right. I mean, but there's like more than 100 names of God in the Quran itself. It's not always
right.
But,
same in the Old Testament.
Yeah. So thing. I mean, still the same thing, but supposed to be. But
well, Sarah, I am going to call it a night because after talking for an hour, my voice is so weakened these days by this dumb cold thing. I don't even know what it is. I don't know if it's a cold. It's more than a cold. It's something. Rainy's got it too, like I said. So,
did you schedule your visit with the doctor?
I went to the doctor today, but it was for something completely different.
Oh.
So we didn't even talk about this stuff. So I got to make an appointment to go see the doc over this. Maybe get my lungs x-rayed and see if it's a walking pneumonia for me, because mine's a little different than Rainy's. So
yeah, I mean, you've had it for a couple months, right?
I know it's come and gone. It's done the roller coaster for about 2 months, and then there's the days where I blow so much snot out of my head that it's unbelievable. It's like I could support a tissue factory.
Right.
So right now I'm so dry in my throat. I got to go take care of that.
Yeah, probably dehydrated now too.
Yeah. So thanks for coming in tonight and talking about this. I'm glad you enjoyed the show.
All right, thank you, Scotty. I'll see you later.
Thanks, and I'll see you probably on tomorrow with Wendy, or at least on Wednesday.
Wednesday, probably.
All right.
See you.
See you later. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I have got to go. I got to go take care of my throat, which is just raw from talking. And the stupid cough, I'm going to go take care of that. And Rainy's probably already in bed with stuff. So I'm just going to go join her. And in the meantime, you all have a good night. I appreciate the fact that you would spend your time here with me. And if you came in after 10 o'clock, you missed an hour of the show. But it's all archived. So I want to thank you all for being here, giving me your time. And in the meantime, live long and prosper.